honestly, you hear it in their voice when they come to the EDU home to it. I mean, it's kind of the first time they've had some hope, because they're looking at, first time, especially a first time home buyer, and they're running around looking at, houses and they're $5, $6, $7, $800,000, and the thing's falling down, or not where they want to live, or it's an hour away from their parents, and this is a game changer. It really is. All right, welcome back to the Just Build Baby Studio. You're listening to the BuildX podcast, your ultimate guide for creating exceptional homes, innovative living spaces, and staying informed on all aspects of residential building technology. I'm your host, Buzz Astiano. Today, we're excited to have Andrew Mikula in studio with us. Andrew is a senior housing fellow at Pioneer Institute with 7 years of experience in the industry. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Buzz.
Yeah, we had a good Zoom. I don't know what that was, 2-3 weeks ago. I did read your article. I thought it was really good. So where I like to start out is just introduce you to our guests. So this show is about you and all things ABU and housing. So it's not about BuildX. So if you could just give us like a quick, bio, how you got into the business you're in now. Maybe take us from, you went to Harvard, correct? Yeah, Harvard graduate, School of Design. So take us from, how did that all start? How did you decide you were going to go to Harvard?
Yeah, well, so I've long been interested in demographics. And I think I realized at some point that something that really affects where people live and who can live in which places is housing. When I was an undergrad, I was an economics major at Bates. I took an urban economics class my senior year, and it kind of started the wheels turning.
Interesting.
Yeah. I worked for Pioneer Institute as an intern, public policy research, a lot of, writing essays about various, policy topics for most of the day. And I got a wide variety of experience with that and kind of the field of economic opportunity. But really one thing that drove my career interest going forward is when I was working on the Alston Multimodal project, which is the project in kind of Alston area of Boston that they're trying to like slide over Interstate 90 a few hundred feet and then, make room for a new kind of urban neighborhood on the other side.
Okay.
It used to be the rail yard there.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, projects that kind of weld transportation with, housing and economic development, that really piqued my interest. And so I decided to go back to school for urban planning. And I was, fortunate enough to get into Harvard. I actually really decided on Harvard as opposed to some other schools I was thinking of going to, because one of the professors at the School of Design reached out to me, found out I had an economics background, and said, "Hey, will you be my research assistant if you
Really?
out?"
Yeah, that's cool.
It really was, and it was hard to turn down.
Yeah. That's a good phone call.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So obviously you're at Harvard School of Design. How long is that? That's a 2-year program.
Yeah, I graduated in 2023.
Okay. So recently. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to do kind of municipal planning work, but I found, that wasn't quite a good fit for me.
Okay.
The impact potential wasn't quite as hands-on as I wanted it to be.
Yeah, it's micro level, right? It's small, one town at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went back to Pioneer, and I've been their senior housing fellow for a year and 3 months now, 4 months.
Okay. So the paint's dry, but not all the way dry.
Yeah. Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah, good stuff. So I don't remember how you and I connected, but obviously we had a good conversation about accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
And how they, how they're impacting families. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Right.
And how that fits into the rest. So now that you've written your paper and done your research, kind of give us the, not the micro level, but the macro level, your take on ADUs and where you see the future going.
Well, at the start, I'll say I had an initial interview with Amy Dane, kind of background for the paper. And it was kind of a snowball sample from there because she listed a bunch of folks I should talk to. And then, when I interviewed those folks, I asked who I should talk to from that. And so I think you were kind of maybe second tier out of the
Okay. Yeah.
but with ADUs, I think my angle on it is it's really hard to get a kind of scalable solution to the housing shortage that involves adapting one solution in a wide variety of places, right? Because if you listen to folks who work in commercial real estate, for example, or a lot of them, they will say we need, to do this at scale by building, 400 units at a time. And I think that can happen in a few places, but really in most neighborhood contexts, even in a pretty urbanized area like Greater Boston, there are a lot of single family neighborhoods where that kind of density, is just a political non-starter
Yeah.
and doesn't really fit the infrastructure that's there now.
No, not even the electrical or water grid could keep up with it.
Yeah. And so I view ADUs as a good kind of incremental and minimally disruptive sort of typology that can still help neighborhoods adapt, especially for downsizing seniors or, folks who want to gain a foothold in these kind of communities when they start forming families.
Right. Interesting. And so, obviously I've read your article, but, as you've gone, whatever, how many tiers you've gone down and had all these discussions. So what's your takeaway? What's your, EDU takeaway from all those discussions?
Right. I mean, I use California as a big case study in my paper for a couple of reasons. First of all, they started early. Sure. They have a long history of ADU reforms. And they have, in Scott Wiener, someone who's kind of spearheaded a lot of the housing reforms.
In California?
Yeah, in the legislature.
Okay, there. In California.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, they have the data on the back end that allows you to see the results.
Because they've been doing it for so long, they can say, we did this and this happened.
Yes. And
what does the data tell them?
Yeah, the top line numbers are they've gone from permitting about 800 ADUs a year in 2014 to more than 30,000 in 2024.
Wow.
And
Per year.
And California's a big state.
It is.
But 30,000 is still like 1 in every 4 housing units they permit.
That's a lot of ADUs.
It really is. And they've also monitored things like the permitting process, right? It's not just about production.
Oh, yeah.
And we know that, they have some progress to make on that still. But the fact that they're documenting it and they can track the results of further policy changes they're making, including ones they've done this year, is, I think, a really good thing for our national understanding of the impact potential of these reforms.
And what do you think the top line takeaways are from you, studying that in California?
Yeah, I think they've, gotten preemptive, especially around dimensional requirements in a way that Massachusetts hasn't. So
that jazz.
Yeah, so they say, at a baseline, you need to allow an 800 square foot ADU with de minimis setbacks, like 4 feet. And
so pretty tight to the lot lines.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the lot coverage, whatever is in the local zoning code doesn't matter. Like, that's the baseline.
Okay. So 800, no matter how big the primary structure is 800. Okay.
Yeah.
Is a baseline. They can go more than that if the town allows it, obviously.
Yes.
Right. So state minimum is 800 square feet, 4 to 5 feet from the side and rear setbacks, and no impervious surface coverage calculation allowed.
Yes.
Interesting.
And so, or at least a lot coverage. I'm not sure about impervious.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And the difference in Massachusetts is it's much more contextual here.
Very.
Yeah. HLC is saying, the housing and livable communities.
Yeah, you gotta executive copy. No acronym for the rest of us. Do HLC? I haven't heard that one before. Yeah. stands for what?
EOHLC is the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
Livable community. I've never heard that term.
Yeah, they used to call themselves DHCD.
Okay, yeah.
And they changed it
rebrand.
Yeah, a few years ago.
And this is a Massachusetts?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the administrative agency that's responsible for passing guidelines and regulations on things like ADUs and also MBTA communities
Oh,
out. And
okay. All right. So they're the architects of these legislative movements.
yeah, so the legislature writes the law, and then they basically decide the details about how to implement it.
Okay. So they work out the bits and parts of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
But that would be, I'd love to get into some of those conversations. That's pretty interesting. Oh yeah.
I have a couple of connections, but I mean, there are a lot of different, there's segmentation.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean more around the ADU. When they talk about, whatever you want to call it, rebranding or, editing the car regulations. Just because I wouldn't say I've done hundreds, but close to 50 applications now and dealt with a couple hundred families. So it'd be interesting to hear their take versus what I'm seeing on the street.
Yeah.
And again, my service area, my area may be different than what they're seeing other places in Massachusetts.
Right. Right. And that's the beauty of California's approach.
Yeah.
Because it's incremental enough that they can look at the laws that's already been implemented
Mm.
and go back and say, what else needs to happen to make this
Yeah.
easier for homeowners?
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, there's obviously some differences in California. Probably most of these areas are on municipal sewer.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a big one, right? And municipal water. Most, I don't know this for a factual statement, but I would say most of California doesn't have any frost issues. So they're just pouring a quick slab on the ground and building a house. I don't know about Northern California, but California as a whole, I don't think has any frost protection issues. Might be different when you get up Northern California, but I don't know that for a fact. But there's some definitely differences. But, what else have you, lack of a better word, learned from looking at that California data? How long does is it mostly rentals that are being built? Is it mostly family housing? What's that makeup look like?
Yeah. And that's the other part of the data that doesn't come from the state, but comes from, the Turner Center at UC Berkeley and a lot of, organizations that are maybe akin to mine who have done surveys with ADU owners. Yes, most of them are rented. It's a slight majority, though. It's 52% or something.
Okay, so it's 50-50. Yeah.
Yeah, but another 20% or so are provided free to friends or family of the owner.
Oh,
So
okay. So they built it and they just say, hey, Jimmy, live here until you get your life straightened out. And then I'm going to move Sally in and she's going to get straightened out. And then Jimmy's, whatever.
right, and it's not all about Jimmy and Sally either, because you think it's a good opportunity for them to have you know some social connections and eventually.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you get no argument from me on there. On that. It's a totally different experience, especially a detached ADU from an apartment or some other, housing where you pull up and it's, even if it's 500 square feet, it's your own little house.
Yeah.
And you're in charge of your own little house and no one's on top of you, no one's beside you, and you're in your own little house.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, it's the right amount of independence, whether you're just, a young person starting out or, the mother-in-law of the homeowner or,
Yeah.
An adult with, physical disabilities.
All do, yeah, or emotional, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I in the limited time that I've been doing this, I've seen, you just see the change in the people once they move in.
Yeah.
You really do. I know that's not quantifiable, but you just see it. You just, they're happier.
Yeah. And would you say most of your clients are family or friends?
Yes. So for us, we don't build. I would say we don't. Rental clients don't approach us because we're not building that kind of product. And there's nothing wrong. I'm not poo-pooing that. We're building, you know, higher end finishes. These are for family members that they want to live in the house. And there's a place for everybody in this ecosystem. I'm not poo-pooing anyone when I say this. This is my business model. This is what I'm building. I'm building for family members that want to have family members to be together for whatever reason that looks like. And I would say 60% is parents need to do something or want to do something to get out of their big old house. And then it used to be 50-50, but it's more like 65% now. And then the rest is 25% is young adults, and then whatever percentage is left, because it's interesting. In the very beginning, it was 50. It was very clear. It was 50% parents, 25% someone in the family has some type of disability, whatever that is, and then 25% was a young adult. Is like, I want my first house, but I don't want to spend $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 or $500,000 on something I need to work on every weekend. So it's been interesting, but that's as and that part of this might be because my marketing might be swaying this percentage, but I see more of the elder parents that are doing something with someone in their family are, that's the majority of the customers. And then the other next big majority is, a young adult, usually in their 20s, that wants their own place and doesn't want to live at home anymore if it doesn't want to spend $5,000 or $4,000 on a month on a pop.
Sure. And do you ever see the homeowner want to downsize into the ADU and then
And it's funny you should say that. So we have an ADU home tour every weekend. So we're at a different ADU, and when you have time, I'd love you to come and walk an ADU and come to a tour. We're finishing on Marshfield the weekend of December 13th and 14th of 2025. So coming up here, and that'd be a good one for you to walk. And the parents are usually around. I think it would be good for you to be able to speak to them. And so they're building this for their daughter who has environmental sensitivity. So she can't be around, VOCs or glues or anything like that. So we built this unit and we stripped all of that out of the unit, and then put a special air filtering system in and a bunch of other things. So it's a combo. This one's a combo where young adult, I think she's 25-ish, and also, I'm not going to call it a disability, but has, something she can't just go rent an apartment because she wouldn't be able to live in it,
yeah,
a lack of a better word. Yeah. So, it's interesting.
sure.
So that's a custom solution but it's funny that the point of that story was, it's funny, a lot of people come in groups when they come to these home tours. We call them families. They come in families, anywhere from 2 to sometimes 10 people, because they bring all the stakeholders to walk the ADU and see, because the first thing they want to know is, what does 900 square feet feel like, right? Or whatever we're building at the time. This one's a 900 square foot. So they want to see that. And very often you'll hear the son or the daughter that the mom's moving in. They're like, "Oh, Mom, I'm going to move you into my house and I'm going to move in the brand new ADU." Yeah. Because they want a brand new house, right?
Sure.
And it's a brand new house and they see it as a brand new house. So it's pretty interesting. And then there is a lot of that future proofing where they say, okay, son is going to live here and parents will live here. And then eventually the son's going to get married or do whatever. And they're going to switch. Yeah. So I love it. It's fascinating. That's what got me excited about this whole thing, is hearing those stories back in, October, November, and December of 24. We were building in Plymouth at the first ADU that I built. Because you got to remember, in December of 23 was the first time I had ever really heard. I probably heard it, but paid attention to what an ADU was when I got that phone call from my friend saying, "Will you build us an ADU?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's an ADU?"
That's basic.
So, I I don't know what you call it, late adopter, or I just wasn't paying attention to it at all. And the more I dug into it, the more I loved it. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think you've still gotten ahead of where it's going to be in 5 years, though.
oh, 100%. I was fascinated to read those numbers in California, because I kind of extrapolated that out. So let's talk about that quick. So what do you think that extrapolated out means for Massachusetts for builds per year?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let me say, I mean, the 550 ADUs that have been permitted through the first half of 2025, um, that comes from an EOHLC, that's a agency, survey they did of municipalities. But not every municipality responded to that survey.
Yeah, so it's probably closer to 800, probably.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, and we have, even if you exclude the towns that didn't respond, though, on a per capita basis, we're building about a quarter of the ADUs that California is right now. Maybe we're not behind relative to 2017 California,
Right.
but I think we definitely have.
So what is that so what is it if you use California per capita and you extrapolate to 30,000, what does the math say that is it in Massachusetts ADU per year, you think?
Yeah, I mean, California has a population of maybe 40 million and we're 7. So
Okay.
call it 5,000 might be a good goal for.
Okay. Yeah, so 3 to 5,000. All right, I've got some work to do.
Right. And it's going to be, I mean, like you said, there are a lot of different business models that work within this.
Oh, 100%. And listen, it does, we are not one size fits all. That's why they make vanilla and chocolate ice cream, right? So
Yeah.
I want people to be happy, and if they're building an ADU that they love, I'm happy for them, right? Listen, I prefer they buy it from me, but if they don't, that's fine too. And we have a lot of people that show up the ADU home tour that are way out of our service area, and and a lot of people come just to visit because I have a lot of Rhode Island people that come, a lot of north of Boston people. I had somebody come from uh, Shrewsbury the other day on Saturday. They drove all the way to Marshfield because they really wanted to see what 900 square foot ADU was.
Wow.
And, I'm happy to have them come look, and we gave them some floor plans and, tried to set them up for success. That's just too far away. I can't build it there. Um, so it sounds like in 5 years, you think there'll be 3 to 5,000 built per year.
Well, I think you're going to need multiple additional reforms before we get.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk about that. What do you think? What's your opinion about me? And I'll give you my opinion. What needs to be reformed.
Right. I mean, I mentioned the kind of dimensional constraints.
So what do you think the number should be in Massachusetts?
I mean, I think ideally you'd have a kind of, again, a baseline scenario where you can build an ADU of this size, or this dimensions with, de minimis setback requirements, 4 or 5 feet.
Yeah.
And, things like the lot coverage and, the overall density of the lot and whatever.
Yeah.
Wouldn't factor into that.
Okay.
And that's something that's going to be controversial because it's more directly preemptive of local zoning, as opposed to basing the kind of guidelines for what are reasonable regulations in the language of the statute on what's in the local zoning.
Right.
But of course, there's a scalability argument to doing more preemptive things with specific numbers because, you don't want to have to reteach contractors and have different modular designs and whatnot for each individual community.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, there's a hodgepodge of regulations. Even I really, I didn't understand when I first read the ADU bylaw or law, if you will. I was like, gee, this is kind of weak. But it actually is pretty elegantly written. Whoever did it, hats off to you, or people, whatever people's put it together. Really well done. And once you understand it and start to apply it, you see how eloquent it is.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful for that. To me, so what in your mind, do you think it's the 800 square feet is the number for here?
I mean, as long as there's a baseline allowance for what's allowed on dimensionally constrained lots. But I think we could go further, especially in terms of making ADUs into homeownership opportunities, which would in turn make them easier to finance. Because right now, a lot of towns, and this is totally allowed by the state law, will say, you can't sell the ADU separately from the primary residence. And in my view, one problem with that, there are a couple, but one problem with that is it really makes it easy for the ADU to kind of not be a housing unit anymore once the property turns over.
Yeah, no, what I've been advising my clients, because I agree with you 100%. What I've been advising my clients, if you can afford it, let's make the ADU as standalone as possible. Separate utilities, separate water, separate electricity, whatever it is, so that at some point there can be a condominiumizing if you will. I don't know if that's a word, but condoizing the property, and then you could sell off or at least maintain ownership. Because one of the biggest uh, one of the biggest roadblocks, detriments, whatever you want to call it, of forming an ADU housing unit, on a property is the family dynamics.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, right? So mom and dad, right? I'm just going to say mom, right? To keep it simple. Mom's here, daughter A is here, but there's 3 other siblings, right? So there's 4 siblings total. And mom's going to sell her house and take $400,000 and build an ADU in the backyard of the daughter. The problem is the mom doesn't own that anymore. The daughter owns it.
Yeah.
Right? On top of that, the daughter is married. The daughter gets divorced, and it forces a sale of the house. Now then, what does the mom do?
Yeah. That's a question for a psychologist.
But it's actually I've had 3 different attorneys on, family planning attorneys, and we've had some great podcasts about it.
Oh,
And they all have 3 different opinions about how to handle that.
sure.
The easiest and cleanest that I've heard to date is they all go on the deed together, and that way the mom still owns her ownership. It also helps with the Medicaid issue for nursing home down the road with the 5-year look back, because she still owns the property. She didn't just receive something from no benefit. Oh yeah, it's pretty interesting. But that I agree with you that at some point the ability to condo these units is going to become key, especially for what you alluded to, because we're building this for this generation, right? And mom, unfortunately, we're all going to check out at some point, right? So mom passes away, and now the unit's vacant, right? And they put a tenant in it, a renter in it, and they really don't want a renter, or they say, we don't need this anymore. We're going to sell it. So I think in 10 years or so, there'll be, there'll have to be a need to be able to split these off, and for the new generation to buy this and a separate generation to buy this.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And
They're doing that in California now, correct?
so I think California allows towns to have
It's not statewide. It's a town-wide thing.
Yeah, but they do say if you have an income restricted ADU, you have to allow a separate sale of that. Which is
Also, if you built it under their affordable housing guideline, right, for permitting or whatever you did, then that can be separated.
Yeah, then there's the state preemption for that. Because they want to create affordable homeownership opportunities. It makes sense.
Yeah, agreed.
But even then, I mean, there are places like Seattle that have gone much further. And
Yes, I know they're allowing some places 2 ADUs, and I believe they're allowing like little ADU clusters, right?
right, but even on the separate ownership,
Oh, okay, just on that front.
yeah, they allow it citywide, and it's one of the bigger examples of a large city that's done that.
Yeah, actually, that's where that AD. I don't know if you ever look at that ADU guy. He's on YouTube. It's a great channel, by the way. We should check it out. Yeah. That's what he does, but he doesn't sell them. He builds them and rents them. So he'll buy a primary home, put 1 or 2 ADUs, and then he rents the whole compound, and he just keeps expanding like that. And I guess eventually he'll sell them, but
Right.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, but the benefit, I mean, in places like Seattle, I think, is these ADUs cost half of what a regular detached home
Or less.
costs. And it's easier to finance than just a house with an ADU on it too, because you can get all the single family mortgage.
Yeah, first time buyer, all those things. Yeah, reduced rate. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And what's your prediction on the life cycle of that becoming true, you think?
Well, it depends on the legislature. I think they do have some zoning reform fatigue now. And everyday communities is a big reason why. I mean, it's
Yeah, that was a tough one. Well, I sit on the Kingston Conservation Commission, and I was the appointee to that committee.
Yeah.
And I got to see a lot of that, what I would consider very heavy-handed zoning passed down from the state.
right.
Very heavy-handed.
Yeah. And, in addition to ADUs, there's also programs like Chapter 40Y, which are, you know, much less heavy-handed, opt-in on the part of municipalities,
Right.
but that's still going through the legislature, and they're still, they feel like they're doing a lot, and maybe now it's time to like wait and see how this bucks out.
So let it percolate a little bit, see what projects actually happen, see how it all works, and then maybe make adjustments.
Yeah, that's my prediction. It'll take another year or two for there to be something big coming from the legislature.
Yeah. I'd like to see him increase the minimum 900 to 995 square feet. And I'll tell you why. Most of the older couples that live together need 2 bedrooms because generally they don't sleep in the same bedroom anymore because of health issues and sleep habits, etc. And 900 is doable for 2 bedrooms, but it's really tight.
Yeah.
So that extra 95 square feet would make a huge difference. Now, some towns have already exceeded the 900 square feet, though. Like Norwell is now 1,300. Plimpton is 1,200. There's a couple others that are getting ready to pass legislation. And some towns it's undefined. So Cohasset, they have an ADU-L for large, and you go in front of the planning board and basically say, I want to build this. And I don't know, there's no written formula. It's just,
Wow. But is that a special permit?
it is. Yeah, that's who knows what you're going to leave there with, but at least there's a way to, you're not aggrieved. In other words, you just stuck at 900. You can, because you think about it, right? Cohasset, there's some big houses in Cohasset, right? 4,000-5,000 square feet. And you're building a 900 square foot ADU, it's going to look funny, and maybe there's a reason why you need 1,200 square feet. Right. So it's interesting. You see a lot of reactions, and again, it's very localized. We have one going to in Duxbury. We have a couple now, and those have to go in front of planning board first for approval, and then we can go file for our building permit.
Yeah.
And they notify all the abutters that it's happening.
Right.
Which to me seems like a little bit of a violation of that, as of right.
Yeah. There are a lot of ambiguities there.
Mhm.
What California has said is no public hearings, no design reviews. Like you can't have site plan review, but it needs to be objective. And I think one direction we could go in Massachusetts to maybe make sure it's a little more objective is codify the criteria for site plan review in the statute, right? If you use a special permit for a larger project that also requires site plan review, that's fine. Let's talk about the aesthetics. Let's talk about the landscaping, 100%, et cetera. But when it's something, again, as minimally disruptive as an ADU, and in a lot of times is not going to be visible on the street, I think we should take every precaution to make sure those sorts of discretionary considerations don't come into the conversation.
Oh, 100%. I'm not gonna mention the town, but I was recently watching some of the Zoom meetings that they had, and it was, literally comments like from the board. I drove by your house the other day, and I always see 4 cars parked there. You have a lot of people living there.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay, that's a whole nother level of interference, in my opinion. That person should have recused themselves, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like anything that you can handle with the knowledge a technical professional has is fair game, right? Any drainage, any turning,
Yeah.
right? But if it's gonna be something about, that resembles a neighborhood dispute,
Yeah, opinion.
then that should be off the table, especially for developments like this.
Yeah.
And in that vein, I spend a lot of my paper, I know this isn't quite your service area, Buzz. I spend a lot of the paper talking about how uniquely difficult it is to make ADUs work in Boston, compared to a lot of Western cities where, ADUs are disproportionately built in larger quantities in places like Los Angeles, right, and Seattle. And a big reason for that is, the access and design considerations are so much harder when, you're not going to have a fire access road that's accessible to a backyard ADU in most of Boston.
Right.
And it just but those are, you know, the role that we should have as policy, as I should have as a policy person, is to say, how do we make this more objective? Because even the fire codes are pretty discretionary when you get down to it.
They can be 100%.
Right. And the fire chief doesn't have to, like, in practice, there are workarounds when there's no fire access road that's 20 feet wide or whatever the code says to the backyard ADU. But those alternatives aren't really enumerated as, like, you can do this as an alternative.
Right.
And it's really at the discretion of the fire official to say, you can have sprinklers as an alternative or something else. And my worry with that is, it raises costs, and also that it's not very predictable on the part of the applicant.
Well, that's the problem. That's the biggest hurdle that I see, even locally here, is, that it's the first three things people want to know. Will it fit on my lot? How much is it going to cost? And how hard it is to get the permit? That's the big three every single time. But the first part is the family dynamics. So building an ADU is 70% family dynamics, 30% what we're actually going to build.
Yeah.
It is 100%. It's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. I was not anticipating that when I started, but it's very obvious to me. And we've had some deals that were, contracts signed, deposits in hand, and they call and cancel the contract a week later because, it caused so much inter-family dynamics.
Yeah.
Literally signed contracts.
Yeah. I'm sure that's the sort of stuff that's above my pay grade.
Yeah, understood. I just really, again, this is just, we're just talking, right? So,
No, I understand. Yeah, it's important because it affects the outcome.
so beyond the, minimal setbacks, minimum size, do you think the 800 is the right number for like the minimum, like that's like this slow as you can go? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so right now we have 900 in the law as like a,
But it's 50% though, that main house. So if you have a small house, if you have an 800 square foot ranch with no basement, you're at 400 square foot ADU.
sure. So yeah, maybe,
Even if you have a big piece of land.
yeah. So maybe if we're going to set the baseline, it's going to be smaller than 900. At that point, it's a little more arbitrary. And I think that it would be a political negotiation. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious what your opinion is, what the right, what that right size is.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, if 800 is the precedent in California, I'm not sure. I need to do some research about home sizes and how they differ between, California.
Yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. I bet you they're pretty similar if you, spread it throughout the state. Look at it as an overall. That'd be an interesting number to figure out what that ratio is home sizes versus per capita over here, and then back into that 800 and see what that ratio is.
Yeah.
That's some homework for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always have more homework, devil's in the details. And I think,
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny when it's funny when you're in the day to day, you don't really think about these things. This is a great discussion because I would have never thought of even thinking of that. That's a double word, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
I would never have thought to think along those lines of how to extrapolate what that, minimum ADU size is based on overall percentages. Because I've gone to some places where, people have an acre of land, but they have a little tiny house that they're living in.
Yeah.
And they need to build an ADU for their parents. And their primary house is, 1,000 square feet, gross floor area, because that's the calculation. So 1,000 GFA, right? And now we're limited to 500.
Yeah.
So I have an interesting one coming up soon. I'm not going to name the town, but, the primary house, call it, is 1,500 square feet. For easy math, it's a little off of that, but call it 1,500. So, they're going to be limited with 750 square foot ADU. They have a huge piece of land. It's 3 acres of land. And the parents, again, 2 parents, one has health issues. They really need 2 bedrooms, and that's tight in 750. Like No one's going to want to live in that. So the plan is to go get a, zoning denial from the building inspector and go to the ZBA and say, we need relief from this 50% rule. So I don't know what we're going to lean on other than we need it.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, that's a situation where I understand why there's an argument for a contextual regulation.
Yeah.
And the other thing is,
But just hold that thought for 1 second. But to me, maybe there's a component where you say there's some calculation based on available land area.
right.
So you all, again, this is a made up number, but you have an acre of land, so you're allowed up to this, that regardless of what size, your primary, that 50% goes out the window. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's considerations like this and that are why California's ADU guidebook is 55 pages long and Massachusetts's regulations and ADUs are currently 5 pages. But
It is really well, honestly, it is really well written. They squeezed a lot into 5 pages.
yes. But the other piece is when you start to get into, well, maybe there should be a carve out for when the land there's so much acreage.
I don't know if the carve out, if it's another calculation. So then then it's not just a feel good. It's a formula.
Yeah.
That says if this, then I don't think that would be that hard to put together.
Yeah, I mean, me neither. But then on the flip side, if someone has an eighth of an acre and still wants an ADU, and you're trying to do what California does, where you have the baseline allowance, that's something else. So where's that threshold in terms of?
Yeah, 100%. The biggest rub in this whole thing, or especially down this way and around here, is the lack of, municipal sewer. So that, the septic is a big conversation almost every day for us, because you can only have, 1 bedroom for every 10,000 square feet of land if you're on a well and a septic. You can go nitrate removal and a bunch of stuff, but I'm just saying conventional, right? So, there's a lot of, the septic is just, I get it. We have to keep, we need to keep the water clean, but it's definitely the biggest wild card in the whole ADU journey.
Yeah.
Especially around here.
And I talked to folks on the Cape about that.
That's another one.
Yeah.
Because a lot of towns down there are passing mandatory nitrate removal systems.
Yeah. And so I think there's an opportunity there because a lot of them are expanding their sewer systems now.
Yeah. No, I did see that. Yeah.
But the status quo is, I mean, I'm not going to name specific towns again.
No.
But you have requirements for separate septic systems for the ADU and the primary unit, even if there's
Oh, really? I haven't heard that one.
in the primary unit. So
Well, I haven't heard that one yet.
yeah, and it's a fluid situation.
Sure, because they mandatory separate septic, even if there's capacity in the field in the other one.
So yes, mandatory.
Wow.
Well, it's mandatory separate systems.
Yeah. No, I understand. I haven't heard that one yet. And that I have not had that situation up here.
Yeah. And my understanding from the regulations, and I've had some back and forth with the OHLC folks on this, is that you need, the regulations say the town can't impose that sort of requirement, but individual boards or utilities can,
Right.
even if they're municipal utilities.
Interesting.
So it seems like a bit of a gray area.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, if they want to hold you up, they're going to hold you up. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
It's just the law is a great first stop, but as you said, it needs some wordsmithing and maybe a little buckling, bracing. But it was really a great first start, and it's helped. I know for us, it's helped a tremendous amount of families. And, honestly, you hear it in their voice when they come to the EDU home to it. I mean, it's kind of the first time they've had some hope, because they're looking at, first time, especially a first time home buyer, and they're running around looking at, houses and they're $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, and the thing's falling down or, not where they want to live, or it's an hour away from their parents. And this is a game changer. It really is.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think, in that vein, homeowner education is really important in this too. Because, I saw a poll from May, and maybe that's changed since then, but maybe it hasn't, that 27% of Massachusetts voters were aware that ADUs were now legal statewide.
Yeah, I think it's increasing. I have seen an uptick in our website traffic and the amount of inquiries we get. So I think it is, and who knows if that's just because we're talking about it all day too, but yeah, I've definitely seen an increase, especially in the attendance too to the ADU home tours has steadily increased over the summer into the fall.
That's
And-
great.
And a lot of people are coming very early in the journey. They're not ready to do it. I mean, you literally though, you have people walk in the door and they're like, okay, when can we start? But then, that's a rarity, but I think that will increase over the next year and a half, 2 years as more people get used to the idea and they work out the family dynamics and, but my number one thing I say to everybody is don't wait too long because as your parents get older, it's harder and harder for them to move. And the longer you wait, the worse it's going to get. It's not going to get any better. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. But, it's funny. I think I told you this story, but, when I started building in the early 90s, I'd be, doing subdivisions or whatever into the 2000s and I'd be in front of planning boards and, they're putting 150, 200 feet of frontage, all these roads, acre and a half lots, acre lots, 2-acre lots. And I'd say to them, I said, you realize someday they're going to let you build another house on this land. And they all used to laugh at me. Right. And here we are building another house on that land.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, it was just really, it was whatever it was, snob zoning, whatever you want to call it. It was very poor planning, long term. And now we've burned up all this land, and put all these roads in that have to be maintained with very little density. And kind of that's where we're building ADUs.
Yeah.
Now, how much of California is allowing 2 ADUs per property? Do we know that number?
So my understanding is there are a few different scenarios, and it's kind of divided 2 ways. So California in general has a much greater allowance for multiple ADUs on the same property as Massachusetts does. In fact, we require a special permit for that.
Right.
And
Has anyone done one yet? Do we know of?
I haven't seen an example.
Okay.
No. I mean, I'm sure they have, but
Yeah.
I'm not aware of that. And California says, if you have, I think it's, you can do detached ADUs one way, attached ADUs the other. I'm not explaining this very well.
Yeah, I understand. It's different regulations depending on what the ADU is.
Yeah, but it's like on multifamily properties, you can have, I think it's one attached ADU for every unit up to 8. And it's like, it's very, very,
Okay.
laissez-faire compared to where we are.
Yeah, you're not going to do that here.
Right. And I think at the minimum for detached ADUs, on most lots, you have to allow one, detached and one attached. Or maybe it's one kind of full ADU and one junior ADU. This is why the regulations are 55 pages. But
Yeah, I'm gonna have to download that and read that. That didn't even cross my mind to do that.
I put it in like an appendix of my paper,
Yeah.
but I didn't print it with.
No, that's fine. If you could send me the link, that'd be fantastic.
Happy to.
All right, what else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we haven't touched on too much yet is finance.
Okay, let's hit it.
Yeah, so I know that right now you need a lot of home equity in order to build an ADU
100%.
in vast majority of cases.
Yeah, or cash.
Yeah, and a lot of the conversation in policy world about how to make it easier for folks to build an ADU is around some combination of public programs, public financing, and kind of loosening credit standards among like the government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, so that you could, for example, use a renovation loan from the FHA or VA to finance an ADU. And I kind of shied away from giving a strong recommendation for that in my paper, in part because expert opinion on loosening credit standards varies widely.
Yeah, I can see that going both ways. I mean, I lived through 2006, 7, 8, 9. So
Right. And the worst fear,
I remember the no-doc loan days.
Yeah. And the worst fear is if you loosen credit standards enough so that you're allowing a lot of like risky mortgage products to be out there, then it's going to create a lot of bad cascading effects when there is a downturn and when those properties are
100%. I haven't. So most of the deals that I've done, there really hasn't been any financing issues. But I'm going to start paying more attention to that. Usually once they have, they showing me how they're paying for it. Obviously I don't. It's not that part of my business, but I'm connecting them with different bankers that we've had on our show, and it's interesting.
Yeah, and I think part of it is coming out of COVID, a lot of people have a pretty solid cushion on their home equity, right?
Oh yeah.
They have a lot of it, but that might not be the case for the generation of buyers that's just getting started now. So
Yeah, and no, that's interesting, especially where you can't finance it separately because it's part of the main structure.
yeah. And the other piece, of course, for folks who don't have a lot of home equity is the public financing programs, which, I mean, Boston has one since, about a year, maybe a little more. But it's only going to provide about 50,000 at most. It's a no interest loan, but that's not enough to build an ADU in itself. You still need private financing to supplement it. So it's really difficult to scale up. Although EOHLC, I think it's EOHLC that's administering it. It might be Mass Housing.
Yeah.
But there is a public financing program that they have in the capital investment plan.
Yes, I'm more of a, in my humble opinion, I'm more of a get rid of all the regulations and make it easier to build, and it'll fix the problem.
Right. Yeah, and
To me, there's lots of banks that I see lined up with all kinds of programs to get this done.
yeah,
It's more that I see is the time. Sometimes some towns are excellent to pull permits on, but other towns are not great. And we're paying all kinds of fees, water connection fees, sewer connection fees, building permit fees, this fee, that fee. It's incredible. We just went to pull a water connection fee. I'm not going to name the town. It was $15,000 just for the fee, not the connection, just for the fee. It was some odd number. It was like 15,000 to change, but a lot of money.
Yeah.
So and if you're looking at a $300,000 bill, that's a big portion of that bill.
Sure.
Right. And then all just gets added on top.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on the public financing angle, I mean, obviously California's tried this too, and they had a big, $100 or $150 million grant program, and they were funding ADUs with maybe like 40,000 in financing of a pop.
Yeah.
But what the state has talked about here in Massachusetts is, a $10 million, fund over 10 years to finance like 1,800 of them, which seems like wildly optimistic to me because that's $6,000.
Yeah. That sounds like a really low number.
Yep.
The 10 million.
So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, I'll definitely keep paying attention, but I agree. I'm a little skeptical of the ability of this to sort of scale up.
Yeah. But like you said, they got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, my prior is the Housing Development Incentive Program, which is to build kind of market rate housing at gateway cities, right? Like the Worcesters and Lowells of the world. That's financed at like $23,000 a unit on the state's part, which is a very, very efficient way of building housing that's publicly supported. And so if we can get lower than that for ADUs, I'll be on board with potentially on board with the state doing more on that.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen happen yet, including in California.
Hell, it's still too early. I mean,
It is.
I mean, this is only became law in February. So,
Right.
a lot of the projects that we were talking about since February are just starting, just either just finishing or just going into the ground.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's new.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, I've been hesitant to, criticize Massachusetts too much on the permitting side because we have the data from the full cycle of permitting in California.
Yeah.
And we really don't in Massachusetts.
I will tell you, though, it is wildly different from town to town.
Yeah.
Wildly.
Right. But what we're seeing, I mean, on either side of the country is even if you have a law that says you need to either approve or deny ADU permits within 60 days of receipt, it takes 6 or 7 months on it. There are really a lot of loopholes
Okay.
that they can.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that. The longest I waited was 5 months, but it was the first one in a town, and it was all about the septic. The septic became the political football.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we covered a lot.
Yeah. Buzz, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're not done yet. We're in the rapid fire segment.
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
All right, you can't look at the questions. Favorite tool you can't live without? Favorite tool? Yeah, could be anything.
Oh, man. Can I be a total nerd and say my graphing calculator?
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing like the old Texas Instruments graphing calculator. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, just so I love seeing the calculations I made previously. That's a big benefit. I don't use the like y equals mx plus function too much anymore, but just being able to go back and like reconstruct how I've gotten to a place is
Yeah. That's interesting. Dream project you love to work on?
yeah. I've always wanted to do something, more hands-on in this field. I mean,
See you coming out to frame an ADU?
well, potentially one day,
Yeah,
I'm a
right.
homeowner. But not necessarily on the construction side, but
Putting the tool belt on.
okay. Maybe not on the, being out in the elements part, but being involved in a project, even if it's on, my own property,
Okay. Yeah.
I'm certainly open to that.
Okay. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Wow. Well, I gotta say, I mean, I was in your bathroom just some, half an hour ago, and you have a lot of inspirational quotes in the wall.
You like that?
What I think my favorite is the no droplet of water thinks it caused the flood or something. Which I
That's a good one.
there's a lesson in that.
Namaste. How are you using AI in your world?
Yes. So Pioneer is actually updating a 20-year-old land use regulations
Really?
using AI right now.
ChatGPT or something else?
So it's a couple different things
Okay.
because we're using
So a custom large language model.
yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're using different models to extract the regulations from the internet.
Yep.
And then a different one to say, okay, what's the maximum, lot size in this count, etc. And we hope to publish the result early 2026.
Awesome. Okay. Advice you would give your younger self?
Yeah. Do your due diligence before you sign on to go out liking a job or anything like that. I've gotten yeah. Just talk to previous employees, talk to current employees who are the boss.
Yeah, that sort of thing. I feel some pain in that statement.
Yeah.
Favorite food and dessert?
Oh man. I'm a big fan of buffalo chicken.
Really?
Anything buffalo chicken,
All right.
apps and dips.
Okay.
Dessert, I mean, 'tis the season, apple pie.
There you go. A la mode or just straight apple pie?
Alamo is great. They're a little caramel.
Ooh, all right.
I like my apple pie served cold. I don't like it.
I do too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
out of the fridge.
Yeah, right out of the fridge.
Yeah.
I feel like it holds together better.
Yeah. First day of leftovers. That's
Yeah.
nice.
If you could have dinner with anyone alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh man. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Really?
He's an astrophysicist. So yeah.
Yeah, I know who that
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was I watched I watched Cosmos, his review of
yeah.
the what's that series.
Yeah, that series. Yeah. I can't think of the name of it either, but I remember that. Yeah. Interesting. Final question. If you had $10 million to donate, who or whom would you donate it to?
Yeah, I'm a believer in effective altruism. Like I'm an analytical person and I want to know that I'm helping the most possible people with the dollars. So I'm going to say give well.
GiveWell. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, they're a kind of a charity aggregate that in turn makes donations to where they think the dollars will go furthest.
Yeah, yeah.
A given, month or quarter.
Interesting.
So they've given a lot to like vitamin A supplement programs in developing countries and anti-malaria.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good stuff. Well, that was fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Buzz.
Yeah. So that's a wrap for today's episode of the BuildX podcast. Thank you to Andrew from Pioneer Institute for joining us. Please subscribe, like, and share if you enjoy it. See you next week. And remember, Andrew, just build, baby.
Okay, I will. Thanks so much, Buzz.